Welcome to 20 Minute Tabletop, a podcast sharing the love of all things tabletop gaming in bite-sized pieces. I'm your host, John Wicke, here today with my co-host, Stevie.
This episode, we're getting regal to talk to you about Kingdomino. So put on your crown, grab your favorite jester, and let's play.
So what is Kingdomino? Is it a combo fast burger and pizza joint?
No, it's not.
Sadly, you are right. Well, if we turn onto the back of the box, carefully, don't spill it, it describes the game as dominoes with a kingdom-building twist. Kingdomino is a strategy tabletop board game. I'd also say it falls into a city-building type game, or more in this case, territory-building type game.
Kingdomino is from Blue Orange Games, created by Bruno Cathala. Art is by Cyril Bouquet. So, let's talk first impressions.
3 words, too real. Quick, fun, buildy.
Buildy.
Yes, buildy. I'm sticking to it.
I thought it was really easy to learn. The rules are fairly simple. The scoring's easy to figure out, and there's not a steep learning curve to it.
That's true. So let's talk about how easy it is to start and get set up. So if we want to play the game, the first thing we need to do is set it up. Kingdomino is very easy to set up and get started. You take out the stack of dominoes, you shuffle them. I personally prefer to just put them on the table and swirl them around. That also means anybody can help you shuffle. Next, you stack the dominoes back up and put them in the handy-dandy dispenser. Then you give everyone a castle for their kingdom, and away you go.
The game is made for 2 to 4 players. I quite enjoy the strategy when it's 4 people building at the same time. It recommends it as 8 and up, though our son was able to play younger than that, though with not a lot of strategy, but little assistance. So how do we play?
Well, the basics are really easy. You take turns selecting pieces to connect to and match what you already have so far in your kingdom. You want to collect as many crowns in your dominoes to build a larger score. From there, it gets a little more complicated, and this is where the strategy comes in. So remember, we did call it a strategy tabletop board game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you're collecting and connecting dominoes by matching terrain. But how you do that really matters. The turn order constantly changes based on the dominoes you choose in the previous round. The better the piece you take now, determined by the number all dominoes have on their back, the lower you go in the following round.
But wait, there's more.
That is true. You collect crowns while building larger connected areas, but that's not the only way to score points.
Right. Making a 5x5 kingdom as a perfect square will get you a bonus. If your castle's in the center of that perfect 5x5 square, that will also get you a bonus. Strategy is involved as well.
So you want to build out large areas, and the number of spaces of a particular terrain you have score you a point. It only scores you a point if it has a crown in there. And additionally, the more crowns you have, the larger the multiplier your score is. So if you have a 5-piece long terrain, and 1 crown, it counts for 5. But if you have 3 in there, it counts for 15. So those multipliers really, really matter. And so there's 4 pieces that go in increasing number order. The better the piece you take, judged by that number, usually it means there's more crowns, or the more rare ones will mean that's the order you go in there. So you pick a piece from top to bottom, and then whoever's got the lowest piece is now going to go first on the next set of dominoes. So they get a better chance at taking a better one. So there's a little bit of strategy of, do I always take the best one? What works best for what I already have? How I'm building? But also sometimes it's like, well, I don't want to take that. I'll take this one so I get an earlier pick the next round.
Right, and it really depends on what's on the table, right? Because you order that new set of pieces from top to bottom, and then once everybody's chosen, you flip those over so you can see the terrain. You can actually take a moment if you're not the first, well, even if you are the first person, you take a moment and you can decide, do I really need that piece at the bottom that's the rarest terrain or the largest number of crowns? Or can I pick the second piece from the top and hope that the next time we deal out dominoes that there's going to be something more advantageous for me?
There's been times where I've done that, where I've given up on something that might give me an extra crown just for the purposes of, it'll help me a little bit, but I really want to get more crowns for the one that I already have this large space because I really want that multiplier to make my score different. So I'm going to just pick the top one so that way I can go first next round and bank on the next round, hopefully giving me something I want.
Right, but you also have to have that variety, right? You can't just bank on getting a ton of crowns in one type of terrain because that's only giving you a score in one of the 5 areas. You really want to make sure that while you are making those large connected areas with crowns, that you're diversifying too, because you want to have you want to have score in as many of the terrain types as you can, because those zeros, when you have no score in that terrain type, does actually usually put you at a disadvantage in the end.
And making that shape is its own strategy all to itself on how you put them in the direction you put them. You can sometimes build yourself in a corner where I can't put a 2-piece here to actually build out the square anymore because I angled things to try to make sure I could put more of this color here and more of this color there, and you build yourself into a corner. But it's kind of great because there is strategy there in that anything can touch the center castle piece. So you can put any of the terrains against that. After that, you need to put at least one of your terrain pieces on your domino against another terrain that matches it. So sometimes it's where you get to a point where you just can't build that perfect square anymore. Or you have to go, well, I can put this here for maximum points, or I can put it here to try to preserve that square. And so sometimes you get that choice of how do I want to do this? And then sometimes you go, I'm just going to build outward and just go because I've already messed up this perfect square. So I'm just going to keep building out this direction and kind of chain my stuff together more.
Yeah, and another thing I like is they have options for other ways to play, as well as like some ideas for house rules. In their rulebook, they discuss a 3-player version, so you don't have to have 4 people. They even have 2-player versions in there. You can do a 5x5 square with 2 players, and in that case, you randomly pull out half the dominoes and then play out like you would just with 2 people. Or there's the one that we played earlier called the Mighty Duel, which is for 2 players. You use all the dominoes, and instead of building a 5x5, you're ideally shooting for a 7x7. And each person, instead of having one meeple, one king mover, would have 2. So again, there's strategy there, because if you're taking the 2 best dominoes in that round, the other person gets to pick 2 in a row before you do.
Yeah, and I have a picture of that I'll have to share of our completely drastically different building styles to building out our kingdom. And yours worked a little bit better than mine. Mine was kind of crazy trying to leave all these gaps, and I built myself where I couldn't actually build a square anymore. But yours was all this concise, compacted together. So it kind of really shows there could be completely different ways to even try to build your kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, I did not end up with a square, but I was able to pursue that 7x7 a lot longer because I was leaving room for all my types of trains to continue to be connected. And while I was doing that, I was also trying to score as much as I could in all the different terrains, knowing that you were trying to do the same thing because we kind of know how the other person plays. So I was trying to not stack the deck, but I was trying to give myself enough room to build out on every terrain type, but also make sure that I had crowns on every terrain type, which does require a lot of strategy. But when you get 2 picks every round, it's a slightly easier to make sure you get crowns than when you're in a 3 or 4 player game, right? Because you're picking twice every round, not once.
Yeah, and I really like the strategy of in between turns. When you have the piece that you're picking up to place while you're getting to pick your next one. And there's a lot of strategy of where do I put this knowing what I'm now going to pick. And it doesn't always work out. I played that at one point and ended up blocking off, my wood terrain. And then the very next round, I ended up with 4 wood that I couldn't connect to that, and it was lost points. So it's a lot of strategy. I love just trying to really think ahead while I'm placing this domino to make my next choice. Well, if I do this one, if I place this here and I'm going to choose that one, can I put these together there, or is it completely different? So it's a lot of fun, I think, in that way. We've talked a lot about the mechanics, so let's talk about that enjoyment of the game. What do we like about it?
I think it's fun, it's quick to learn, it's easy to understand. You can easily play for multiple rounds. It's fun for adults because you are able to go head to head more in the strategy portion of it. And I definitely enjoy working the strategy even on nights that I'm too tired to math. I just know I want crowns in all my 5 terrains. And when I say it's easy to learn, I think we taught my family how to play it in, like, under 2 minutes one time we were up there, and then we played it for 3-ish hours because we just kinda all kept swapping in and out who was playing who, and then once the kids went to bed, they were a lot smaller then. The adults continued because we all got really competitive trying to see who could A, win the most games, but B, who could max out the score as high as possible, and that's where that strategy comes in. Because if you wanna max out that score, you need all 5 terrains and the perfect square and your castle in the center, because those bonus points give you that boost you need at the end.
Yeah, that's what I love about this game. We bought it for playing with the kids for something that should be fun for us to do together, but also fun for us to play. They could understand and pick up and learn, and then that we could all play together. And what I loved about it was that that's what it became. It became, we're playing this with the kids go to bed. Okay, now we're going to keep playing it. Now we're really playing hardcore strategy and trying to outwit each other. And like, those strategy games to play together are just so much more fun when you have a group of adults. And it's one of those that you don't need a lot of thought. You can play it when you're a little more tired. There's strategy to it, but it's still easy enough you can play without having to put too much thought in of game. It's not one of those more complex games that you need to have a little bit more. It's a nice, easy game. I could see playing this just as fun with friends, with a drink, hanging out and playing it without having to worry about too much. And it's good for, later evenings when you are a little more tired. I will say there is something really satisfying about making that perfect 5x5 with all your terrain lining up. It's very hard to do. Haven't done it a lot. It doesn't even mean you're going to win. Your crowns and what you build matters more, but it's really, really satisfying.
Oh, for sure, and, I mean, depending on how competitive you are, I don't remember if this was our house rule or a house rule in the book. You can also do things where you cut it off at a 5x5 grid and trying to keep people in that setup and forcing them into making the perfect square, and that can actually, like, cut off people's points and stuff too. And that is another interesting twist to the game and the scoring system that you can add, at your home table that can make it a little more challenging if you're finding it too easy, or just a little more competitive if, you're related to me.
Yeah, and the great thing is to play a game of this, it takes 15 minutes tops. It's real quick, it's real easy, and you can play another round, another round, another round. Like I said, all you do is flip them all over, mix them up, and stack them back up and go again. So it's easy to play again. It's a little bit different every time. So it's not super repetitive, but it's not super long to play. So if you only have a little bit of time to play a game, this is an easy one to break out. When you put it away, you can shuffle them, put them in the stack. So when you want to start playing, all you do is pull it out, set it up, and go. You can play one round before bed and send people to bed.
And if you have really impatient kids, not naming any names, it's really nice to shuffle those and set it up so that you just have to, like, pull the tower out and be like, all right, pick your color, let's go. It cuts down on some of that prep time where they may lose interest or drift off into, la la land, and the game's over before it starts.
Yeah, and it keeps their interest of playing a couple of hands, a couple of rounds together, and then we can move on to something else. So they can stick through a couple of rounds, get a couple of tries, and see how they go. And it sometimes that's good because after the first round they remember the strategy a little bit and can play a little bit better the second time around.
Right. Hey, John, are there any special things of interest or interesting things about this game?
Yeah, actually, this won a fair amount of awards. I'm not going to read them all out because it won quite a bit, but the biggest being that it won Game of the Year at Spiel 2017. So it's won a lot of awards. It's not just us saying it's good. It's, like I said, it is legitimately good by people who do this for a living. Oh, wait, we do this for a living.
And I mean, Game of the Year is a big deal. There's really only one of those. So the fact that you're talking about something that won Game of the Year, even if it was, oh gosh, 6 years back, so it's clearly like the best of the best in recent time.
So let's talk our overall feelings and final impressions.
I think it's a great short game with an interesting strategy component.
Yeah, I call it a fun game with good replayability.
So, I mean, to sum up, this is definitely one we both enjoy, both with and without kids. It's definitely something you can play with your family or with your friends or all of the above.
Yeah, this is a great game that we played today, just the two of us. We played that 2-player version on our own, and it was a lot of fun. Not just for the game, not just for the recording of the podcast. We played it because I wanted to see what it was like. And honestly, it's a lot of fun, and I want to do it again.
You just mean you want to lose again.
Hey, you barely beat me. I'm your host, John Wiki, and you can find me on Twitter as John_Wiki. That's Wickee.
And I'm Stevie. You can find me on social media at Stevie's Game Closet.
"20-Minute Tabletop" is a Morecore Studios production. Theme song by Arthur Rowan, Morecore art by Sita Duncan. Do you want more tabletop gaming fun? Subscribe to 20-Minute Tabletop on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find out more at our website, 20minutetabletop.com. That's the numbers 20mintabletop.com. Or connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at 20minutetabletop. That's at 20mintabletop. Thank you, and roll with fortune.
Well, much like the game, today's podcast is only going to last 15 minutes to show you that during this podcast you could play an entire game of Kingdomino.